Live from the C21 Showtime studio in LaSalle, Ontario. You're listening to the Nick and Joe Show, where we talk about the people, places, and faces of our community. It's showtime.
What an introduction. What's up, everybody? Nick Monteleone here from the Showtime podcast studios here in LA. Next to me, I got my old man, Joe Monteleone. And I'll let you introduce our great guests here.
Yeah, thank God he takes after his mother.
Yeah.
Anyways, welcome. We got two guests. Of course, our regular host here, Charlie Hotham from Hotham Building Materials, located on the North Service Road of EC Row Expressway. Welcome, Charlie, and we're going to call this, as I said last time, the Nick, Joe, and Chuck Show. Okay, so welcome.
Good to be here. Thanks, Joe.
Of course, today we have a special guest, and that's David Musyj. Welcome. He's the president and CEO of Windsor Regional Hospital. Welcome. We're not going to be easy on you today. Okay.
I wouldn't expect that. Thanks for having me.
Anyways, no, it's our pleasure, and thank you for coming and joining us today. I know a lot of people are sometimes leery to say podcast. Are you kidding me? You know, I'm in a firing range here, but no, we're gonna have fun today. Anyways, big topic, David, of course, and everybody will agree that congratulations on, first of all, the new hospital location. I was one of them that also supported it, and I'm sure that you had an immense group of support in the community. But of course, there was always the naysayers and all that. But we're here to always talk about the positives of the location. So congratulations again, and maybe you can share a little about the process to the great news and so forth. So
yeah, so first of all, thank you very much for having me here today with all of you. So yeah, so we had a very positive announcement last week, twofold. Number one is Lafferty Farms made a donation. Everyone is familiar with Lafferty Farms and Lafferty Corn, and it's kind of a legendary site out there with respect to 42 and 9 as their corn stand at the corner is very popular, and it's been there for years. So we were able to, because of, in large part, even though the group that opposes the location, I think will unfortunately continue to clearly debate it, which is fine, but continually try legally or otherwise to slow things down. But in large part, all their challenges are over now, the significant ones, and if they're doing anything now, it's just to delay things for whatever motive, I don't know. But in any event, it was great. We were able to close on the transaction finally with the owners, with the O'Keefe family. They were, you know, even though they sold the property, they were patient over the years to, it's been 5 years to get to this point. So we were able to close. We now own the property, and we are actively working with our government leaders to officially get into stage 2. In 2017, they announced, the previous government said we can get into stage 2. The money didn't follow. The grant didn't follow to give us the money to do the work that's needed in stage 2, which is what's called functional programming. We can talk about that a little bit later. But so we're advocating with this government to get us the monies to get us into stage 2, and the premier, as everyone heard about a month ago, came down here and said it's because he heard from all the mayors of all the municipalities, Windsor and the county, and also Chatham-Kent, and he went around the room and said to them, what's your number one priority? And to a person, they all said, get that new hospital built. So he said, as a result, it was overwhelming. It's his number one priority, and we're wearing the masks. As he said, I'm going to be an 800-pound gorilla and make this happen. So I want to work with that 800-pound gorilla and make it happen and make it a reality. So
It's exciting. It's exciting to see such a big project coming to our community, something that was needed. The hospitals are older, it's older facilities, and they're great. They're servicing our community. They've done great work over the years, but it's time to build for the future and expand, get ready for that, the growth of our community. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see the expansion, something bigger, something better, something new technology, right? I mean, there's evolution that happens in medicine every day. And I'm sure that you can see a cutting edge hospital built today versus what was built, years and years ago. So we're excited. We're excited to see that.
Yeah, and if you look at just what we're going through right now, you talk about a couple issues I want to hit on there. Number one is a lot of people think we have two general hospitals right now, the Med Campus and the Ouellette Campus. No, we don't. We have one hospital at two sites, meaning we have certain services at one site, certain services at another site. And we have hundreds of patients a given year go back and forth between the two sites because they either need cancer services or they need renal services, they need trauma, they need neurosurgery, or they're having a baby and or pediatrics. It's separated over two sites. The goal was to get it under one roof to gain those efficiencies for patient care so the patients don't have to bounce back and forth. Aside from the fact we have some of the oldest inpatient floors in the province of Ontario at the Ouellette campus. And generally, yes, there are some smaller hospitals in the province that have older facilities and they're coping, it's fine in large part. We're not one of those smaller facilities. We are one of the largest hospitals in the province of Ontario. And we have to wrap our minds around the fact that we have a trauma program. We are the only non-academic health sciences center, so a teaching hospital, even though we're affiliated with Schulich, that has a trauma program. So we're larger than a couple of the academic health sciences center in the province of Ontario. So on the grand scheme, we're a big player. We provide a lot of services. And the reason we have things like neurosurgery, cardiac program, NICU, cancer program, is we're drawing not only, and that benefits our residents of Windsor, Essex, so we don't have to leave our region to go get those services. We're drawing numbers from outside of Windsor, Essex. So we're having people come from Chatham, Kent, into Windsor to get those services. So I'm not saying we build a hospital for, all of Erie, St. Clair, Lynn, all the way to London, but we have to wrap our minds around that as Windsorites, we benefit from a hospital that draws the individuals from these other jurisdictions to get those services. That's why we have those programs. It's just, if the analogy is, it's a bad analogy, but it's an analogy. If you have a certain type of car, you want to go to someone who works on that car not once a year, but 50 times a day. Mm-hmm. So you want those volumes, so you have those specialties there. And that's what we have. So that's number one. Number two, just real quick on the pandemic with our hospitals. As we all know, one of the things, if you make this akin to a war that we're going through right now and the impact of a war, and because of the individuals that have passed away and the effect it's having on our economic situation, one of the ways governments post-war or at the end of a war really promote investment is through infrastructure investment, because that promotes the economy, promotes jobs, and does something we desperately need. What a better way than post this pandemic, which is healthcare, but to invest in our region in something we desperately need, which is a new acute care hospital, which will help us with, because, in all realities, it's not going to be our last one. First of all, this one's going to last with us for a bit still, and then who knows what's next. So at a minimum, aside from the other issues we need a new hospital for, that's one of them. Because some of the stuff our staff had to go through and our patients and community, and yeah, we set up all these tarpaulin negative pressure rooms and all that kind of stuff, but boy, that's not, you don't want to be working in that environment, or being a patient in that environment for a long period of time. It's tough. So I give kudos to the team and the staff, and they still doing it on a daily basis, but they're doing a lot in the existing facilities. It's time taken away from patient care that they got to worry about whether a toilet's flushing or there's a burst of a pipe in the wall, and we can't find the shut-off valve because the thing's 70 years old.
You know, David, over the course of my career in this construction field, I have been heavily involved with a lot of the renovations that have taken place at both sites, both campuses. And there's a common denominator when you speak to any one contractor that might have a particular phase of construction. And the cost level to do that type of work escalates enormously because everything is retrofitted. You can't find lines, as you said, you can't find proper shut-offs. So all of a sudden, a break in the wall that should be 12 feet might be 25 feet because they got to go deeper into the bones of the building in order to find out where the shut-off might be or the connection point for oxygen lines or air lines, whatever it might be. So as a resident of this area, I'm saying we need this hospital. I was excited a number of years ago when it was announced. It was very frustrating for me as a resident to see the delays caused by few. I was part of some of the presentations from the industry to go around to different councils and make presentations in support of. And it just seemed for a long time, we seemed to be banging our head against the wall and making no headway. So when I seen the announcement and I watched the interview with you on, I think CTV or whatever it was, how encouraging it was as a resident, as a taxpayer, and knowing how much work that goes into maintain these old structures. It's exciting to see something to now look forward to. We have the property, the generosity of the Lafferty family. Now I'm a little surprised because it was $50,000 that he didn't give me credit for 25 of it, because I've been buying corn from him for so long and so often.
I wanted to throw that in. Charlie's
got to be half of that.
Charlie's mourning right now.
But I was, and he didn't bring any corn with him. I figured he had a couple.
But that was an incredible donation on behalf of the last.
And on my perspective, when people used to bring up that conversation of the hospital, and again, my opinion, my perspective. First of all, I don't believe that as much as people wanted it in the core city, that there was truly enough land to look at the big picture. And here's the big picture. First of all, we can't just think of just a hospital. We have to think of as you mentioned, having a university facility with the hospital, as London does. Also, we may have a children's hospital. We may have other specialties. That can only happen if we have an abundance of land to grow a true major facility. When you're handcuffed in the core area, yes, you may build a new facility, but that's it. There's no room for growth. And we can't take a look at just the single-use purposes today. We have to look at the future abilities, possibilities, and so forth. And that's the picture that I always put in. And you touched on also infrastructure. Very important. The hospital alone is going to put a lot of infrastructure into that southern part that's owned by the city of Windsor, yet it'll allow all those lands to be developed in the future as well, because the city of Windsor is basically landlocked now from east to west. Its growth area now is going to go south. So there's a lot of possibilities, opportunities of growth going south. So it's a win-win for the community, for the hospital, for the whole region. Those are the reasons why my argument was I love the location. I fully agree. And one other thing you mentioned, about the situation because of COVID right now. I had vertigo about 2 months ago, and I was rushed into the hospital. It is the most eeriest feeling to be brought in and watching these ducks and all that, and you're sitting there and saying, oh my God, I'm being transported through areas that people are, in these special rooms enclosed because of COVID, and it just didn't fit right. And I said, you know what, the new facility, I'm sure all this is going to bring the design of being ready for a pandemic purpose, that if a flip of a switch, we're ready for, whatever hits us next. You can only do that with a new hospital.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, even simple, people say, well, it's great to have two facilities right now because if one gets overridden with some type of pandemic, you still have the other one to operate. The way our two facilities are now, COVID is not airborne unless, you aerosolize the patient, but the next one might be. And the issue becomes, we don't have separate air handling systems at our existing facilities. Mm-hmm. If there's something in the air at our existing facilities, it's going through the whole building. So people saying, oh, you'll be able to, we don't, unfortunately, generally stand a chance unless you're in one of the negative pressure rooms and it's being pumped outside. And we have very limited, we have like 15 between the two campuses right now. And that's what's all the tarpaulin and everything is just the temporary ones. But what with the new facility though, is every single section of that hospital is going to have its own air handling systems. So God forbid if we have some type of airborne outbreak in the pediatric area of the hospital, that is going to be contained in that area. It's not going to be spreading across the whole hospital. We don't have that ability now to be segregating the air handling.
Exactly.
Now is that a new thought?
No, that was planned.
So
that we've been planning for this, unfortunately, pandemic. Some of our infection control people, this is so I'll give you an example. Every year we do tabletop exercises with respect to pandemic plans. And our last 2 years, and especially last year, this was last fall, 2019, our tabletop was on novel coronavirus. Okay, so wow. We knew this was coming. We didn't know how it was going to come, what it was going to look like, but we knew it was coming. Everyone was kind of, not everyone, but you knew it was there. So it's all of our planning with the new facility and all of our a good chunk of our reasons and rationale for the new facility is infection control based. Is right now between our two campuses on average we have 20% private rooms. We need to flip. We need at least 80% private rooms. So what happens now when a patient comes to the emergency department and they have to be ruled out of COVID, so they don't have COVID? If they get admitted, we have to put them in a room that was a semi or a ward of 3. We have to put them in alone until we get the results back to make sure they're clear of COVID. That just, if you think of that, we're occupying on any given day, taking out of service 60 rooms out of service out of our facility because of that process, that safety process. In a new facility, we wouldn't have to do, or any facility of new right now, you don't have to do that. They'd go right into a private room because that's going to be their room. Instead of having these rooms, like for instance, at the Olette campus, on the 7th floor at the Olette campus used to house the pediatric program. They would have 1, maybe 2 pediatric patients in one of the rooms. Right now, or before COVID, now we have 3 adults. So a physician or staff would go into that room and the beds are closer than the 4 of us are. As you can reach out and touch all the beds. That's how close they are. In today's world, you can't have that. Mm-hmm. You can have that pre-COVID. It wasn't right. It's definitely not right now. And we had to, so we have to take beds out of service. And this is going to be our new normal. Mm-hmm. So as a result, we're, jamming things in. And then the issue becomes, like some hospitals, they didn't have to do a St. Clair College. Thank God for St. Clair. But they didn't have to do a St. Clair College Sportsplex field hospital. They were able to do that within their facility. Thank God St. Clair's around and we could do that. But that's not the preferred approach.
Right.
That's the
you
backup of a backup. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like that's it's great. It's amazing. The work that was done in there was amazing, let alone St. Clair to have that ability to have that facility there and their partnership. And they just on a dime said, yeah, go do it, save lives. And they did, but that's not what you want.
Yeah.
You want that in the facility. And it's just
David,
something
can
we're
I
missing.
pick up on a point Joe mentioned earlier about the infrastructure and the requirements for the infrastructure? Because we all know it's farmland and it's virgin land that requires every bit of infrastructure in order to build anything, whether it's a hospital or industrial building. Is there timelines that you've been given by government, whether it's provincially or federally or even our local government? Have they told us when we can expect to see some shovels in the ground with sewer work and road work and all that?
So the plan right now is they announced we're in stage 2, but they didn't give us the money. So what stage 2 is, it's a functional programming, is where you have not only the clinicians involved in the planning, but we're going to get the community involved. So if you're interested in cancer, you're interested in neonatal, you're interested in renal, you can be a part of that planning and be at that table, socially distanced. It'll be probably Zoom now, but you'll be at that table and planning involved. And if you have ideas because you have a family member or you yourself were a patient and you can add that value and you're going to be involved. So the critical part getting in stage 2 is once they give you the grant money, they're in effect going to lock down a date when they want to see shovels in the ground. So they go side and side. So once they say you get the grant money for stage 2, they also put in their budget and their multi-year budget. The province says Windsor Regional has 2026, 2027 is the year they're putting shovels in the ground to start construction. And the reason they do that is, number one, from a budgeting point of view, is to budget out their monies, but also they recognize there's a finite amount of general contractors that are building projects of this magnitude in the province of Ontario, let alone Canada. So they have to spread out these projects to make sure they don't dump 6 or 7 hospitals being built at once, and then you end up with the general contractor, the price escalations and all that kind of stuff as a result of that. So they have to be very strategic with respect to, okay, Windsor Regional's got 2026, 2027 is their year. So that's kind of where it's at, and that's why it's so critical to get into this next stage. What we're hearing is the province has their November 5th budget, but that's technically their 2020 budget that they didn't do in March. And we've been informed that that's going to be very, quote, operational in nature, operational funding. They're going to do a little bit of capital, but not a lot. It's going to be the March 2021 budget. That's going to be the capital-based budget. So we got between now and March to get it in that budget. And they make those decisions pretty much now into the new year. So we got to make sure we're in there and they pick that date and we lock that down, and that's what we aim for. So we got a ton of work to do though in stage 2. It's because it's the words, it's what it's going to look like, how it's going to operate, what are the programs going to look like. And then you pick up those words and you hand it over to an architect in stage 3, and they design the hospital around those words. And then you go to RFP and shovels in the ground.
Some amazing conversations right now, everybody. We're going to take a quick little break. Again, we got David Musyj from the hospital here, from the Windsor Regional Hospital, and Charlie Hotham from Hotham Building Supply. So we're going to take a few minutes, and we'll be back in just a couple. Looking for quality construction building supplies for your next project? Give Hotham Building Materials a call toll free at 1-866-593-0001 or visit them at hothambuilding.com. All right, everybody. So we're back here again. We got Charlie Hotham from Hotham Building Supply here, and also the president and CEO of Windsor Regional Hospital, David Musyj, and then obviously myself, Nick Monteleone, and my old man, Joe.
Yeah. Okay.
So we had some interesting conversations actually on break. Sometimes the best conversations happen when we're off air. So we were talking about even cruise lines and how things have kind of changed a little bit and what the future is. And what's your quick spiel on what's going to happen with vacations, with cruise lines, with how things are going to unfold for the traveler.
Yeah, so the way I look at it myself personally is this is going to be with us for quite some time. Anything you hear with respect to the vaccines is, it's generally positive, but in reality, when you talk to the experts, you're looking at a vaccine in effect for, a cold virus. We don't have one. So it's going to be very difficult to get a vaccine that has high efficacy, meaning high ability to prevent the spread of this virus. And then also there's stuff with respect to the virus and immunity. And again, how long will a vaccine give you immunity for? You're going to need multiple shots of whatever vaccine, one and a booster within a month, and then you're going to need something within the next few months to keep up, and then different variations of the virus. So what they're doing, and I think we got to look at it this way, is what's looking at the Alberta model, we talked about this briefly too, is they're having anyone on international travel or travel outside of Alberta, when they come back, instead of quarantine for 14 days, what they are testing right now or piloting is you get a swab within 48 hours, and if you're negative, you don't have to quarantine any longer, and you can go on and do your daily activities. And that's along the line of, we have to get back to some form of normal and allow people to travel, allow people to go, just not for essential activities, but non-essential activities, to go if they have a place somewhere else or want to go on vacation somewhere in a safe manner, is go on vacation, come back, get tested, but get on with their life and not have to take 2 weeks off before they go back to work. Because that's what's probably preventing a lot of travel right now, or people are saying, first of all, I can't, I could fly from Detroit to Florida, but I can't afford 2 weeks off when I get back to take off. But I would like to go down or go see my loved one somewhere, but I just can't afford the quarantine when I get back. So hopefully we move towards that type of model in Ontario. Hopefully it goes well in Alberta. I know it's in some international countries, they've tried it and it's gone okay. So when it comes to what our future is for travel, I mean, there's going to be some industries, we talked about it, the cruise industry, that's going to be tough. I mean, they struggled before COVID with respect to the spread of viruses and issues like that on a cruise ship. And we saw the stories at the start of COVID, so it's going to be tough for them to return.
Question, one thing that really I guess troubles me in not understanding the logistics of it is communication between hospitals, then within our regions, and when I say regions, Ontario, across the country, and then of course with other countries. And for instance, I'm going to use this as an example. We have systems that are used in the United States today. They say that in 7 minutes or 12 minutes you can find out if you have COVID. And yet, we are a modern country. Where's the disconnect of, is it dollars? Is it politics? Is it just lack of medicine knowledge? I sometimes have trouble understanding why.
Yeah, so good question. So with respect to communication, yes, we have, for instance, in our region, it used to be 3 times a week, now it's twice a week. We have what we call tables, where we have hospital tables, long-term care, critical care, ethical communications, and they meet on a regular basis amongst our whole Erie St. Clair region. Chairs meet. We meet twice a week. Today's one of them, where we talk about what's going on in our action plans. And then 3 times a week, I'm the representative from our region, where we meet with the bigger West region from here all the way to Hamilton, with ourselves as hospital leads. There's 4 of us, and public health, and also the non-hospital table. And then there's a provincial table. So there's a lot of communication, a lot of back and forth with respect to information. With respect to technology and testing, The issue is Canada, so there's a process for approval of these products through Canada Health. The issue with the tests is the gold standard is what is called PCR. And that's the gold standard. The false positive, false negative rate is very slim, meaning there's not a lot. It's very accurate. It takes time, and there's a limited amount of the test kits and the reagent internationally. That's what's holding up any type of quick, even the States is struggling with this. You know, they have like even longer, 14-day turnaround times, which is useless. It takes that long to get a test result. Ours here, 48 hours. When it got really busy, it got higher, but we're 48 hours, which isn't too bad. And we got our own machine, but we're waiting on the kits ourselves. And that's an international shortage. It's not an Ontario shortage, not a Canada shortage. It's from the start of this. It's a shortage of these test kits. So what some places have gone to, and Canada did this, is you go to these antigen tests, which is some of these companies have these 15-minute turnaround time tests. They're not as accurate. So you have a higher false, generally in them, false positive rate. So you can get a quick turnaround time, but you have false positives. Some will argue I'd rather have a false positive than a false negative, because I'd rather think I'm positive rather than think I'm negative. I'm not really negative. So Canada bought a bunch of these machines. Ontario has a bunch of them. Our region from here to Hamilton has 7. We're trying to get one here. The problem is any of these quicker turnaround time testing, the false rate could skew. So it's not an issue where Canada's saying we don't want to do it because we don't want to spend the money. It's the scientific issue of, is it worth having the false rate versus nothing? And if you hear Premier Ford, everyone's kind of saying, I'd rather have that than nothing. Like, at least give me that. Because the alternative is I have nothing. So at least give me a fighting chance. So that's the struggle that's going on right now with these quick.
Okay.
They're quick, but there's a false rate.
The false rate, what percentage, are we talking 5%?
No, we're talking about 20%.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
So it's a big difference.
So
Yeah.
if you hear, Lions fans, you'll hear Lions had a couple teams that they had some players, the opposing players tested positive like on a Saturday night, and they were worried about whether they're going to play the game on Sunday. Well, what they're doing, they generally use these tests, these fast turnaround time. They don't generally use PCR. So as a result, they're getting these false positives, and that's creating, well, that guy's positive, and then they get 2 quick tests after, and it's okay, they're negative. Okay, we're going to go with negative. So it's playing that once you get into that area of these tests. But it's great if you're in an area, if you're rural Ontario, northern Ontario, then if you got nothing, it's better than nothing. If you have limited access to PCR testing, it's good. It'd be good for us in larger long-term care retirement homes, migrant worker situations where we got to get in and we got to close that down as quickly as we can because we know it can spread like crazy in the congregate settings. So how can we go in, get really quick tests, turnaround times? Yes, if we get false positives, you know what we're going to do? We're going to cohort, segregate them from the rest of the population. They might be false positives. I'd rather have, again, a false positive than a false negative. So we'll deal with that. But that's the settings it's for. But it's not meant for like a hospital inpatient setting. 20% false rate is not something you want to be gambling on in a hospital setting. So you gotta, that's the difference. So
you know, David, you touched on the fact that the Lions are certainly a sporting event. Well, you probably have had to have seen the footage on the World Series the other night where Turner was yanked from the middle of the game because he was tested positive, and they took him and removed him from the field. And they won the World Series that night. And an hour and a half later, whatever, the game was over and the celebration was underway, back he was on the field, and he had a mask at one point, but then at one point he took it off for pictures and he was hugging people without it. Total disregard for any precautionary steps that the law has said you need to do. social distancing, all those types of things. I found that to be rather offensive and total ignorant on his part to act and project himself into those social settings. He was hugging his coach, who has just gotten over cancer, is a cancer survivor, hugging his players. I understand the excitement that he had for winning the World Series, but at the same token, you're potentially infecting all these other people that you're close to. I was appalled.
Yeah, and that's, from my understanding, he had tested with an indeterminate before the game, and they then, what you do, they retested him, and then he came back positive, and the result came back during the game, and he got pulled off. But I agree. What bothered me is he's sitting there taking the photo, taking his mask off, and he's sitting right next to the head coach, who's a former cancer survivor.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see where that unfolds. But yeah, I would imagine Major League Baseball is going to have to really
They're going to come down.
throw the hammer down pretty hard
Cross
on
their
that,
fingers
because
there.
come February they got to get back and running.
David,
and they can't have that.
Another question I was going to ask you about, and I was listening or watching a news show the other night. I can't remember which one, doesn't matter. But one of the stories they did was on Australia, because they're getting their seasons reversed to ours. They're getting out of their flu season. And the results that they are finding, because people were more cognizant to washing their hands, social distancing, wearing their masks, all those types of things that we're doing for COVID, the rate of the flu season, or the flu, people getting the flu, is dropped drastically. You must follow that as well.
I follow it daily. We have our board meeting coming up, and I have slides on even our Ontario, Canada, so far in the flu season. Is our testing for the flu virus is up, meaning we're testing more people for the flu. Our numbers of positives are negligible, nothing, in Canada right now, as a result of it, as compared to last year at this time. And so the same thing as the Australia model is two major things happen there. Is all the public health measures that you're taking with respect to COVID did hold off the flu, and as you stated, we follow. So whatever Australia flu is, we know what's coming. That's our bellwether. We look at what Australia is, their winter season, and we'll mimic it in ours traditionally. So they had that. Number one, the health measures they took. Also, their vaccination rates were way up with respect to flu vaccines. So I can tell you at the hospital, ours are way up already with respect to our hospital staff getting vaccinated. I can tell you on a good year, we'll get 40% of our staff get vaccinated. Right now, we're closing in on 50, and it's near the end of October, which is unheard of. So the issue is for all of us, is it seems there's a delay, unfortunately, with respect to the flu vaccines getting here. Mm-hmm. There's supposed to be some more shipments in November, in the middle of November, and getting out there, especially the higher dose for the 65 and older population that need the extra dose to help them. So, the advice right now is to try to book your appointments, be it through your pharmacy, under your family doctor, get in line with respect to your time to get the flu vaccine, and they should be coming in, but get your shot. So it's great that there's a demand for that, but yes, that's exactly what we look at. And that's the one thing about the quote second wave is we can't have the flu and COVID, because the symptoms, first of all, are almost identical. But the COVID and flu hitting us at the same time, we'll just get overwhelmed. Yeah. So if we can just push flu down to nothing and keep it there, then we can just focus on COVID. But we got to keep doing what we're doing. It'll help both with respect to public health measures.
Great.
David, I just want to say on behalf of all of us, thank you to you and all your staff. There's true heroes. I know we tried to reach out and buy everyone pizzas, but unfortunately he says no because
You don't want
you
pizzas.
can't have people touching pizzas. But we didn't know what to do to.
Yeah.
But thank you for everything that you've done, all the physicians and staff and everyone involved in the hospitals. You've put yourself up front and center to a pandemic that a lot of people are fearful, and yet you're going towards it, and instead of going away from it. So on behalf of Century 21 Showtime Realty, myself, and I'm sure Charlie has the same sentiments, thank you kindly, and thank you for coming in. I'll probably see you on the golf course. When Charlie's on the golf course, because you always hear him about 4 holes away. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you always hear Charlie. And I hate that, I don't know, like one of the safest places it seems is on a golf course. I haven't heard many people catch COVID on a golf course. So.
No, I agree.
Well, where I hit my ball, nobody's near me.
Exactly. Well, I figure because I'm in the woods so much. me and the squirrels. So as long as the squirrels are fine and the couple chipmunks we got, we're good.
Well, thanks, gentlemen. That's great. That's fantastic. All right, everyone. Again, Showtime Realty here. We get our podcast studio here in LA. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
And thank you for listening to the Nick and Joe Show. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, email us at joe@c21showtime.ca.